Hey, what's up? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching Sit Down. Ilze Hugo is here with us. The Down Days, her brand new book. Ilze from South Africa. How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Really nice to meet you too. Isn't it amazing that we can have this technology and talk countries apart, given everything going on right now?
It's incredible. When I wrote this book, I never thought I would be talking to you over Zoom like this. It's incredible.
Yeah, I never thought a lot of things would be happening. And I'm sure when you wrote the book, you never thought we'd be living in a world like this because it's quite apocalyptic in terms of what you're writing about. There's masks going on. There's a sickness that's going through the community. So how did this even come together before all this went down here in real life?
It's absolutely crazy because when I wrote this, at one point I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I put Cape Town under quarantine? And then for a second there, I was like, but that sounds so far-fetched. That would never happen. And look, yeah, where we are right now. It's crazy. So it happened quite a few years ago. I was a freelance writer. I was working for Time Out Cape Town. I was doing research for a guidebook. And while doing this, I stumbled onto this teeny tiny obscure medical museum, and there was an exhibition there on how different diseases throughout the world and throughout South Africa have shaped culture and society as a whole. And it was such an interesting concept for me. And I didn't start out thinking I'm going to write a post-apocalyptic pandemic novel. I was toying with these ideas and I found it really interesting, not necessarily the pandemic side or the virus side, but more kind of how kind of events like this, big events, change people.
Yeah, I think that's...
Yes, sorry.
No, feel free to keep going.
For example, that I really found fascinating, something I never really thought about before, is Cape Town was founded on a disease. I mean, the whole reason why Cape Town was founded when it was founded was because we had all these sailors going from west to east on the spice route, and they were dying from scurvy. So the Dutch East India Company at the time decided, okay, listen, we need a garden, we need fruit, we need veg. This is basically the midway point between east and west. Let's kind of create a community there, set up a colony, and just think how the history of our country would have been different if it wasn't for that disease. It's quite weird.
That's really fascinating. And it doesn't matter if it's Cape Town, the United States, Russia, wherever it is, like it just shows what people are like and how people come together. And I feel like also your book, it kind of hits on focusing on individuals versus focusing on the good of society, because some people are just kind of in it for themselves. Other people are looking to help society. So what was it like playing with that concept in the book?
So that's always been the thing that's fascinated me about post-apocalyptic novels, because we always think we know who we are, and then something like this comes around and it completely screws with your perceptions about what kind of a person you are. And this notion of the good guy and the bad guy, the scales really when it comes to a situation like this. And I loved playing with normal characters and trying to figure out how they will change as this whole event progresses. And as they fall on hard times, they have to find new ways to make money, etc. What will they do in that situation, and who will they turn out to be? And I think that's why we're all kind of fascinated by pandemic novels and post-apocalyptic novels, because we all like to think about how will I react in that kind of a situation.
Well, from what I've read about your book too, it's like you're talking about Cape Town and just, you know, the generational effect that it had in terms of the way that it started. In your book also, it's like, this isn't just a short-term deal. Like this is years and years of new behavior. And I feel like people are kind of in this world like, this is only going to be for a short amount of time with COVID-19, but actually it's going to have this generational impact. So what are the biggest things in terms of like the society that you created? What are the biggest changes that you saw in terms of the characters in your book and how they kind of behaved with one another?
So for Cape Town, I feel it's a country that is still, or the city is still very much disjointed, and spatially there's a lot of inequality, and I really like playing with that. And I really like the idea of you have the city, and the center of the city is really a space for the rich. And then what happens in an epidemic, the rich tend to self-isolate, or they go overseas, and then all these other people who have been kicked out of the city because of the Group Areas Act, etc., get to move back in and create this new kind of community. So I found that quite interesting. And it's interesting, I love the world building. That was my favorite part, because I took a lot of what I read historically, and I kind of tried to, and what I read in the newspapers, and I tried to work that in. And it's weird to see now. I mean, I never thought when I was writing this that I would ever live the day to see anything closely like it, but it's so weird to see the similarities and the differences, and to think, oh, I never thought that would happen, or to think, or to see something that I did think about and to see how it plays out. Like, for example, masks,
Yeah.
people drinking bleach, thinking that that would be a cure, people thinking whiskey can cure the disease, online funerals, and also, which a big part of my novel is the way that conspiracy theories and myths tend to spread during times of epidemics or pandemics. And to see that actually happening is very weird.
It's really crazy. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, just this era of disinformation, because it can cost people their lives. Like, they start drinking bleach. They have no idea this is actually going to hurt them as opposed to help them. Like, what is the craziest part of that in terms of how misinformation spreads, especially during a pandemic? What fascinates you the most?
Well, the whole thing is absolutely crazy, because I think if I look at history, because I can only really look at history, because the repercussions of what we're seeing now, we're only going to really understand a lot of it years later. I think a lot of people tend to grab onto these fake news, these myths and conspiracies, because they're feeling lost and there's not a lot of information out there and they don't really know who to trust. And in terms of the science, in terms of the government, they don't really know what to believe, and people need to believe in something. They need to feel secure. They need to feel that they know what's going on. And it's crazy, the kind of, like, even normal rational people I'm finding are grabbing onto all sorts of different things that they would normally not believe in, and things that kind of affirm their biases or affirm what they kind of need to feel or need to believe right now, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Suddenly people are experts in categories they knew nothing about, and they're telling other people about it. It's really wild. And, the other thing I think about too is, like, how do we come out of this? Right. So in your story, it's like, this is kind of the world that's created. It changes people. Have you thought about what, life looks like for us going forward in terms of how we kind of redefine what it means to be a culture and what it means to be human?
I definitely think that's going to happen. Whether that's going to happen for the better or for the worse, that still remains to be seen. But I'm an eternal optimist, so I hope some good will come out of all the bad that we are going through right now. I really do.
Yeah, I think we can be really grateful for things that we kind of just glossed over from time to time, like even just being able to read a book. That's something really simple, or write a book. That's something really simple, but, some people never have that opportunity. So I think it's awesome that you had the chance to tell your story. And I'm sure it's just so crazy for you that it happens to line up with all this. Like, what's the eeriest part about your book compared to real life right now?
Sorry, say that again?
What would you say is just like the eeriest thing in terms of the comparisons between your book and real life? Like, I can't believe what I wrote in the book is actually happening in real life.
Well, the lockdown, I would have never thought that could happen on the scale that it did, and that the government, I mean, the rules at the moment, like, for example, in my book, it's very difficult to get alcohol, and people mix their own stuff. And at the moment, the price of pineapples in South Africa, it's skyrocketing because everyone's brewing pineapple beer. And I would have never imagined it. There's a lot of stuff that I could have never imagined would ever happen in my lifetime that I wrote about.
Well, Ilze, I'm looking forward to people checking out the book. Thanks so much for being with us. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you down the road, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.